My dad was halfway through his favorite story about how I killed my little brother when my 16-year-old son pushed his chair back from the Thanksgiving table and walked out of the room with his face white as a sheet. And that was the moment I decided I was done being the family villain. If you've never heard someone casually describe you as a murderer over mashed potatoes, let me tell you, it does something to you, even when you've been hearing some version of that story for 30 years. To Luke, my dad boomed, raising his glass the way he did every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, every family reunion, anytime there were enough people around to make it worth his while. My boy, taken too soon because some people think rules don't apply to them. Everyone's forks paused in midair. My mother dabbed her eyes with a cloth napkin she'd owned since the 80s. My younger sister, Becca, stared fixedly at her plate, the way she always did when Dad wound himself up. My husband, Eric, shot me a look across the turkey that said, "Are we really doing this again?" My dad didn't need encouragement. He never did. "You kids probably aren't sick of this story yet," he said to the cluster of grandchildren around the table, even though I knew for a fact my nephews could recite it like a monologue. "Back when your Aunt Hannah here was 17, she thought she knew better than everybody. She thought drinking and driving was no big deal." His words dropped into the room like stones. I felt each one hit my chest. I opened my mouth, closed it the way I had 100 times before. My son, Noah, sat 2 chairs down from me, his shoulders rigid, his eyes flicking between his grandfather and me. "Dad," Becca said quietly, "maybe not at dinner." "They need to know," my father said, jabbing a finger toward the kids. His face was already flushed from the wine. "They need to learn from our tragedy. Actions have consequences. You want them ending up in a ditch like Luke." "Henry," my mother murmured, "eat your food." He ignored her. "Just like always. Your mom and we had rules," he went on. "No drinking, no sneaking out, no taking the car without permission. But your Aunt Hannah, she thought she was smarter than everybody. She had a party, snuck out, took the car, and she—" "That's not what happened," I said before I could stop myself. The room went very still. On my left, my daughter, Lily, froze with a roll halfway to her mouth. On my right, Eric's hand slid under the table and found my knee steady and warm. My dad's eyes snapped to mine. "What?" he barked. "Nothing," I said, my heart pounding. "Just, you're leaving some things out." "Oh, I'm sorry," he said, his voice dripping sarcasm. "I forgot you were there. Maybe you want to tell it, since you're the star of the show." A few people laughed nervously. Most didn't. The thing about a lie that's been repeated enough times is that it settles over a family like dust. Everyone breathes it in. Nobody wants to cough. "I don't think the kids need to hear it," I tried again. "They already know not to drink and drive." "Well, they don't know why," Dad shot back. "They don't know their mother killed her little brother." The word sliced through the room. Killed. It always does, no matter how many times you've heard it. I saw Noah flinch. I watched his jaw tighten. And for the first time, I saw myself reflected in my own child's eyes the way I've always been reflected in my father's. Not as the dependable one, the responsible one, the one who kept this whole wobbling mess of a family from tipping over, but as the girl in the story who killed her brother. I felt something in my chest shift, like a gear finally slipping out of a groove it had worn deep over decades. "I was not drinking," I said. "I was not driving. I did not kill Luke." My dad slammed his glass down so hard red wine sloshed over the rim. "The hell you didn't," he snarled. "You begged me for those keys. You snuck out, you got behind the wheel, and you put that car in a tree. You walked away. My boy didn't. That's on you." Noah pushed his chair back with a harsh scrape. It jolted everyone. "I'm done," he said, his voice shaking. "I'm not hungry." "Noah, wait," I said, standing up. But he was already out of the room, out of the house, the front door banging behind him. Through the window I saw him head for the driveway, shoulders hunched, hands jammed in his pockets. "Now look what you did," my mother hissed at my father. "You upset him." "Good," Dad said. "Maybe it'll scare some sense into him. Maybe he'll think twice before he—" "Enough," I said. I didn't shout. I didn't have to. The word came out low and sharp and final in a way that cut through the layers of habit and politeness and that old familiar terror of making my father mad. People actually stopped breathing for a second. "Excuse me," Dad said. "I said enough," I repeated. My hands were shaking, but my voice wasn't. "You don't get to sit at my table and call me a murderer in front of my kids. Not tonight. Not ever again. Your table," he scoffed, looking around my dining room like he'd never seen it before. "We paid for half this house. We co-signed the mortgage," my mother added quickly, as if that helped. "Don't forget that, Hannah." Eric squeezed my knee. "We refinanced 10 years ago," he said mildly. "The house is ours now." Dad waved a hand, dismissing reality the way he always did. "Point is, we made you," he said. "We fed you, clothed you, kept a roof over your head, and this is how you talk to me?" My heart pounded so hard I could hear it, loud in my ears like I was underwater. There was a folder in the sideboard drawer behind me. I'd put it there 3 weeks earlier, after I found it in my parents' house. I told myself I was just keeping it safe, that I was thinking about what to do with it, that I wasn't going to start drama. But the truth is, I'd been waiting for this exact moment, for him to say those exact words. "We made you." Like I owed him my whole life because he didn't drop me in a dumpster. I turned, opened the drawer, pulled out the manila folder, and set it on the table between the green beans and the cranberry sauce. "You want to talk about what happened that night?" I said. "Let's talk about what actually happened, not the story you've been telling for 30 years. Dad stared at the folder like it was a snake. "What is that?" he demanded. My sister shifted in her chair. "Hannah," she whispered. "Don't." "What is it?" my mother echoed, her voice high and strained. "Where did you get that?" I slid the top page out and turned it so the printed text faced my father. The paper was yellowed, the black ink a little faded at the edges, but the words were still legible. The Commonwealth of Pennsylvania seal at the top, the date, the case number, and under driver 1, Henry James Callahan, my father's full name. "It's the police report," I said, as calmly as I could with my hands trembling. "From the night of the accident. I found it in a box in your closet when we were getting Mom's winter clothes out, along with your DUI paperwork, and the letter from your attorney." For a second, nobody moved. My father's eyes flicked over the paper. I watched the moment they hit the line that said, "Driver's bid 0.13. His jaw tightened. His hand curled into a fist on the table. "You went through my things?" he said, ignoring everything else. "You had no right." "I was looking for Mom's sweaters," I said. "You were in the hospital, remember? With pneumonia." She told me to grab some stuff from the back of the closet. The box fell over. The papers spilled out. "I didn't go looking for this, Dad. You hid it in plain sight." "What are you talking about?" Becca whispered. She reached for the report with shaking fingers, but Dad slapped his hand down on it. "Don't you dare," he said. His voice was low and dangerous, the way it used to get when we were kids and he was 3 beers in and something in the house wasn't the way he liked it. I met his eyes. For the first time in my life, I didn't look away. "It says you were driving," I said. "It says I was in the passenger seat. It says Luke was in the back. It says you blew a .13 at the scene and the DA declined to prosecute because you just lost a child and they didn't want to compound the family's suffering. It says you pleaded guilty to reckless endangerment and they gave you probation and took your license for a year. And then the record was sealed." I swallowed. My throat felt raw. "It does not say I was driving. It does not say I was drunk. It does not say I killed my brother." The room erupted. My nephews started talking at once. My kids stared at me like they'd never seen me before. My mother covered her mouth with her hand. "Where did you get that?" she kept whispering. "Where did you get that?" "Is that true?" Becca asked, her eyes wide and wild. "Dad, it's paperwork," he said finally, his lips barely moving. "Stupid paperwork. It doesn't mean anything. It's the official record, I said. It's what actually happened according to the people who were there. According to the officer who pulled you out of the driver's seat. You begged me to let you drive. He spat. You were always begging to drive. And you were drunk. You think I don't remember? I had half a beer at a bonfire 3 hours before, I said. You'd been at Ernie's bar all afternoon. You reeked of whiskey. You insisted on driving because no daughter of yours was going to drive you around like some old man. You remember that. His eyes flashed. You're twisting things, he said. You've always twisted things. Dad. Noah's voice came from the doorway. I hadn't heard him come back in. He was standing there with his hands shoved in his hoodie pockets, his face pale but set. Is it true? Did you lie about Mom? My father's gaze slid past him back to me. You see what you're doing, he said. You're poisoning my grandkids against me. After everything I've done for you. There it was. The script. The same one he'd used my whole life. You're ungrateful. You're dramatic. You're making me the bad guy. I could feel the old instinct rise up, the urge to back down, to laugh it off, to say, we're all tired, let's not do this now. But then I looked at Noah, at his confused, hurt eyes, at my daughter's clenched jaw, at my sister, who'd spent her whole life worshiping a version of our father that never really existed, at my mother, who knew the truth and had gone along with the lie anyway. And I heard myself say, I'm not poisoning anyone. I'm telling the truth. For the first time in 30 years. To explain why that mattered so much, why a piece of paper could blow up an entire family at a holiday dinner, I have to go back to the night in question. I was 17 when Luke died. He was 10. It was October, cold enough that you could see your breath in the air when you exhaled. The leaves slick on the back roads that twist through our part of Pennsylvania. There'd been a PTA fall festival at his school, one of those wholesome small-town things with hay bales and pumpkin painting and a bake sale table where the brownies always sold out first. My mother volunteered at the cakewalk. My father volunteered to help with parking, which in his case meant standing in the lot with a reflective vest and a red flashlight, then sneaking off for one drink with his buddies at the bar 2 blocks over. I went because my mother begged me. I can't wrangle him and do the bake sale, she said, handing me Luke's backpack. Just make sure he doesn't eat too much sugar. And don't let your father drive him home if he's been at that bar. She said that last part in a low voice, like it was a secret between us. Back then I thought we were a team. Me and Mom managing Dad. Like 2 zookeepers sharing a wink over the lion enclosure. I didn't realize she was grooming me to take over her job when she was too tired to do it anymore. I watched Luke bob for apples and smear orange frosting on a cupcake and run laps around the playground with his friends. I watched Dad disappear toward Ernie's, promising he'd be back in a bit. I watched Mom count change and smile through gritted teeth at other moms. Around 9, the festival started winding down. Kids went home in clumps, trailing balloons and plastic prizes. The air got colder. My breath steamed. My mother rubbed her arms and said, Go find your father. Tell him to bring the car around. Luke's got school tomorrow. I found him at the bar just like I knew I would. The place stank of stale beer and fried food. He was at a high top with 3 of his buddies, laughing louder than necessary, a half-empty glass in front of him. Dad, I said, staying near the door because I knew better than to walk all the way in. Mom says it's time to go. Tell her I'm on my way, he said, not looking at me. You've been saying that for an hour, I said. Luke's falling asleep on the bleachers. It's a 15-minute drive home. Come on. His friends hooted. She's right, Hank, one of them said. You heard the boss. Boss, Dad snorted. She knows better. But he slid off the stool. When he stood up, he swayed just slightly. You drove here, I said. Give me the keys. I'll drive home. He laughed in my face. Over my dead body, he said. What kind of man lets his teenage daughter chauffeur him around town? I'm not some invalid. You're drunk, I said. You shouldn't be driving. His jaw tightened. That look came into his eyes, the one that meant we were either about to have an argument or I was about to back down. "I've had a couple beers," he said. "I'm fine. Get in the car." I looked back toward the school, where I could see my mother's silhouette in the doorway, her arms wrapped around herself against the cold. I thought about Luke yawning on the bleachers. I thought about every time my father had come home from Ernie's weaving a little, and my mother had pretended not to notice. "If you drive, I'm not getting in," I said. It was the bravest thing I'd ever said to him. He tilted his head. "What did you say?" "You heard me," I said, my voice wobbling but standing. "I'm not getting in the car if you're driving." We had a standoff in the parking lot, our breath puffing between us like steam. Finally, he thrust the keys at me so hard the metal dug into my palm. "Fine," he snarled. "You want to be a big girl? You drive. But if anything happens, it's on you." I wish I could tell you I handed the keys back. That I refused on principle. That I walked Luke and Mom home and we all lived. But life isn't a safety video. It's 2 minutes of stubborn pride, 3 minutes of bad choices, and 1 patch of wet leaves on a curve you've taken too fast 100 times before. I drove. My hands were slick on the steering wheel. My heart pounded. Dad sat in the passenger seat, silent, reeking of beer. Luke was in the back, already half asleep, his head bumping lightly against the window every time we hit a bump. It was dark, the kind of dark you only get on back roads with no streetlights, the headlights carving a tunnel through the trees. It had rained earlier, and the asphalt shone. Somewhere between the old mill and the turnoff to our subdivision, a deer darted out. Or at least that's what my brain registered. A flash of white, a darker shape, Dad yelling, "Watch it!" I jerked the wheel. The car skidded. We hit something, a tree, a guardrail, another car, I honestly couldn't tell you. The sound was deafening. Metal shrieking, glass exploding, Luke screaming, then choking off. Then nothing. When I came to, my head hurt so bad I could barely think. The windshield was a spiderweb of cracks. My seatbelt dug into my shoulder. The smell of gasoline and something hot and sharp filled the air. Dad was shouting. The passenger door was open. Cold air rushed in. I turned my head. Pain exploded down my neck. "Luke!" I croaked. No answer. "Luke!" I tried to move, but my legs were pinned. Someone was outside, yelling. Sirens wailed in the distance. The next few hours are a blur of light and noise. EMTs cutting me out of the car. A neck brace. The taste of blood in my mouth. A bright white room. A nurse with kind eyes. Sobs that I realized eventually were coming from my mother. "Where's Luke?" I kept asking. "Where's Luke?" Nobody answered at first. Finally, a doctor I'd never seen before, with gray hair and tired eyes, took my hand and said, "I'm so sorry, honey. Your brother didn't make it." I remember the way the world folded in on itself, like someone had turned down the volume and dimmed the lights. I don't remember screaming, but I must have because my throat hurt for days. Later, when the shock had dulled just enough for other thoughts to creep in, a police officer came to my hospital room. He was middle-aged, with a mustache and a notebook. He stood awkwardly at the foot of my bed. "I know this is hard, miss," he said, "but I need to ask you a few questions about what happened." "I was driving," I said immediately. It tumbled out of me like a confession. "I was driving. It's my fault. It's all my fault." He glanced at his notes. "Your father says he was driving," he said. "That you were in the passenger seat." My brain stuttered. "No," I said. "I was driving." I could still feel the wheel under my hands. He gave me the keys. I didn't want him to drive drunk. The officer's eyes flicked to my mother, who sat in the chair by the bed, her face blotchy, a tissue clenched in her hand. "Hannah," she said softly, "you hit your head. You don't remember, right?" "I remember," I insisted. "I was driving." "Your father blew over the limit at the scene," the officer said gently. "If he was driving, that's a crime. If you were driving, given your age and the circumstances, well, the DA is considering leniency. But they need to know who was behind the wheel." "It was me," I said. I told you. My mother stood up so fast her chair scraped the floor. Can we have a minute? She asked the officer, her voice bright and tight. He hesitated, then nodded. I'll be right outside, he said, and stepped into the hallway. As soon as the door clicked, my mother turned on me. What are you doing? She hissed. Telling the truth, I whispered. I killed him. It was my fault. You didn't kill him, she said. The deer did. The rain did. The road did. God did. I don't know. But it wasn't you and it wasn't your father. It was an accident. Then why is he asking who was driving? I asked. Because they need someone to blame, she said. And your father can't go to jail. We can't afford that. We'd lose the house. We'd lose everything. Your sister would have to drop out of school. You'd never go to college. Is that what you want? No, I said, horrified. Of course not. Then stop insisting on something that doesn't matter, she said. The official story is that your father was driving. The DA will feel sorry for a grieving parent and let it go. They already said they don't want to compound our loss. Your little fit of honesty is going to ruin what's left of this family. But I was driving, I whispered again, saying it felt like picking at a wound. I should be punished. Tears spilled down her face. You think you're not already being punished? She asked. You think you're going to walk away from this? She gestured toward the empty space where Luke should have been. You're going to live with this for the rest of your life. That's enough. Don't make it worse. I looked at her, at the woman who'd bandaged my scraped knees and threatened to take away my phone if I missed curfew, and realized she wasn't asking. She was telling me what reality was going to be in our house, whether I liked it or not. When the officer came back in, I kept my mouth shut. My father came by later, his arm in a sling, his face bruised. He looked like a man who'd been in a car wreck, which somehow made me irrationally angry. If he'd walked in untouched, at least I could have liked him a little less. How you feeling, kiddo? He asked, standing awkwardly by the foot of the bed. I'm not your kiddo, I said. It slipped out before I could catch it. His jaw tightened. The officer says you told him you were driving, he said. You need to stop that nonsense. It's not nonsense, I said. It's the truth. The truth, he said, leaning closer, is that if you tell the D you were driving, they will charge you. Maybe not with manslaughter, but with something. Your mother and I will have to hire a lawyer we can't afford. The whole town will know. You'll be that girl, the one who killed her brother. You want that. They already know, I whispered. They don't, he said. Right now they just know we had an accident. You start running your mouth about being behind the wheel, and they'll crucify you. They'll say we were bad parents. They'll say I was a drunk. You want that on top of everything else. Tears blurred my vision. You were drunk, I said. His eyes went cold. You watch yourself, he said. You think they won't go harder on you than on me? Little girl like you, they'll make an example out of you. Your life will be over before it starts. He leaned in closer, his voice dropping. Or, he said, you can shut up, let the DA close the file, and we can grieve without all that. You can go to college like you always wanted. You can leave this town someday. You can have a life. All you have to do is stop insisting on something no one can prove. The officer said you were over the limit, I whispered. Paperwork can be wrong, he said. Machines mess up. Your mother even told them you were driving at first, and they didn't write it down. You think these people care about being precise? They want this off their desk. He straightened up. His voice hardened. Or maybe you want to be a martyr, he said. Maybe you want to confess and wear sackcloth and ashes. That what you want? You want to ruin us to feel righteous. I shook my head, sobs clogging my throat. No, I said. I don't know what to do. Do nothing, he said. Say nothing. Let me handle it. That's what fathers do. They take the weight. I can live with people thinking I killed my boy. Can you? The thing is, he was lying even then. But I didn't know that. I was 17 and shattered and exhausted, and I wanted someone to tell me what to do. So I did what he said. I said nothing. The DA closed the case. They took his license for a year on a reckless endangerment plea. He worked out with the lawyer from church, the kind of small-town justice people call mercy when it lands on someone they like. The official story in the paperwork became that my father had been driving home from a school event. A deer ran out. The car slid on wet leaves, an unavoidable tragedy. They did not mention the bar. They did not mention me. I thought that was the story we were all going to tell. What I didn't realize was that my father was busy crafting a different one. The first time I heard him say I'd killed Luke, it was a month after the funeral. I was coming home from the grocery store, arms full of plastic bags, when I heard his voice from the living room. If she just listened, he was saying. If she just followed the rules, my boy would still be here. I froze in the hallway. Henry, my mother said. Don't. Why not? He snapped. She was out drinking with those friends of hers. She came home stumbling, demanded the car keys, said she was fine. I tried to stop her. But you know how she is. Always thought she knew better. That's not how it happened, I said, stepping into the room. My hands were shaking. I wasn't drunk. You were. My father turned to look at me. His eyes were wet, but there was a hardness there too. You're going to argue with me about what happened the night my son died? He asked. You're going to stand there with groceries I paid for and call your own father a liar? Hannah, my mother said, her voice tight. This isn't helping. She thinks she's the victim. My father went on. Poor little Hannah. She's the one who has to live with it. What about me? What about your mother? What about Becky? We lost him too. And we didn't even get to make the choice. That's how it went over and over. I tried to correct the story. He'd get louder. He'd cry. My mother would side with him. Eventually I stopped trying. The story solidified. At church. At family barbecues. In whispered conversations I heard a beat too late to pretend I hadn't. Such a shame. People would murmur when I passed. She was always such a wild one. That's what drinking will get you. At least now they've got their heads on straight. The official record said one thing. The social record said another. Guess which one mattered more in a town where my father had been the high school football hero and the loudest voice in the deacons' meetings. Becca was 14 when the accident happened, old enough to see more than anyone told her, young enough to still be desperate for our parents' approval. She chose her side early. If you hadn't made such a big deal about him drinking, she said once when we were arguing in our shared bedroom, he would have just stayed at the school. You had to push it. You always have to push everything. He was drunk, I said. He shouldn't have been driving. Maybe you shouldn't have either, she snapped. Maybe if you hadn't wanted to be in control all the time, Luke would still be here. I left for college the next year on a scholarship my guidance counselor fought like hell to get me. I thought distance would fix it. It didn't. I carried my father's version of me like a stain. I drank less than everyone else. I refused rides from anyone who'd had more than a sip. I flinched at the sound of screeching brakes in traffic. I had nightmares about headlights and wet leaves and my brother's last scream. I also avoided going home. You're running away, my mother said on the phone. Your father needs you. Becca's there, I said. She can help. Becca's just a child, she said. You're the oldest. You have responsibilities. I was a child when you made me responsible for him, I said. And look how that turned out. We didn't talk for weeks after that. The distance didn't protect me from the story. My parents told it to everyone. When I brought my first serious boyfriend home for Thanksgiving at 21, Dad cornered him in the den and asked him if he planned to let my daughter drive drunk like she did the night she killed her brother. I heard about it later from my boyfriend, who looked at me like I was made of glass. Is that true? He asked. I tried to explain, but all he heard was, I was behind the wheel when my brother died. He broke up with me 2 months later. I just don't think you've really dealt with your issues, he said. I don't want to be your therapist. By the time I met Eric, I'd learned to tell my own version of the story. The one where we all took a vote and decided Dad should drive. The one where the deer came out of nowhere and the car slid and nothing could have been done. But the guilt, the core belief that I was dangerous, that I broke everything I touched, that had already settled into my bones. Eric saw it before I did. You act like you're responsible for every bad thing that happens within a 50-mile radius, he said once, after I apologized for a thunderstorm ruining our picnic. I am, I said, half joking, half not. You're not, he said. You were a kid in a car. Your dad was the adult. He was the one drinking. You know that, right? According to him, I was drinking too, I said. According to him, a lot of things, Eric said. He didn't meet my father until after we were engaged. At our engagement party, Dad did the speech. Of course he did. I remember when Hannah was little, he said. Always running ahead, never looking where she was going, always getting into trouble. And then that trouble finally caught up with her. He launched into the story. He always started it the same way, with a chuckle, like it was a funny anecdote instead of a tragedy. Then he'd lean heavy on the moral lesson. But she learned. He always finished. She learned the hard way. And now she's a better person for it. Right, kiddo? It's hard to contradict a story that ends with your own supposed redemption. It's harder to call your father a liar in front of 50 people you barely know. In your mother's backyard, with fairy lights strung through the trees and a cake that says congratulations in pink frosting. So I smiled. I made a joke. I let him do it. Afterward, Eric pulled me aside. If you want me to say something next time, I will, he said. You shouldn't have to sit through that. It's fine, I said. He's old. It's how he processes. No, Eric said. It's how he avoids processing. There's a difference. I shrugged it off. I'd spent so long in the role of the bad kid, the reckless one, the one who had to atone, that I didn't know how to step out of it without feeling like I was stealing something that wasn't mine. Then, 3 months ago, my mother fell and broke her hip. She was in the hospital for a week, then rehab for another 3. My father, now 76 and slower than he used to be, couldn't handle being alone. He called me 3 times a day. I can't find my socks, he'd say. Your mother always knows where everything is. They're in the top drawer, Dad, I'd say. Same place they've been for 40 years. The TV remote's gone, he'd say. Somebody must have stolen it. It's under your newspaper, I'd say. Like always. Eventually, I started going over every other day to tidy up, bring him meals, make sure he wasn't falling apart. Old habits hard to break. One afternoon, I was in their bedroom, trying to find my mother's heavier sweaters because she kept complaining the rehab center was like a meat locker. There was a box on the top shelf of the closet, the kind of old banquet frozen pie box my mother used for everything from Christmas ornaments to old birthday cards. When I tugged at a stack of sweaters, the box tipped. It fell off the shelf, hit the floor and burst open. Papers scattered everywhere. Damn it, I muttered, dropping to my knees. I started scooping them up. At first I thought they were just old bills, insurance statements, the usual flotsam of long lives. Then I saw the heading on one of them. Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Traffic collision report. My stomach lurched. I froze. I knew instantly what it was. Even before my eyes landed on the date, even before I saw my brother's name under fatality, my body knew. The report was folded, creased from being opened and closed many times. My father's handwriting was on the bottom, his signature, the jagged H and C I'd watched him scribble on permission slips and checks my whole childhood. I sat back on my heels and read. Driver 1. Henry James Callahan. Age 43. Vehicle. 1995 Ford Taurus. BAC 0.13. Passenger 1. Hannah Marie Callahan. Age 17. Passenger 2. Lucas Michael Callahan. Age 10. Weather wet. Road conditions slick. Contributing factors. Alcohol, speed, road conditions. Narrative. Vehicle 1 traveling northbound. Witnesses state Vehicle 1 swerved abruptly, struck guardrail, then collided with southbound Vehicle 2. Driver of Vehicle 2, 18-year-old male, uninjured. Passenger 2 sustained fatal injuries. Driver 1 removed from driver's seat by EMS. Passenger 1 found semi-conscious in front passenger seat. I had to stop and put my head between my knees to keep from passing out. When the pounding in my ears subsided enough for me to hear again, I kept reading. There was a supplemental report from a week later. DA has decided not to pursue vehicular manslaughter charges against driver 1 due to extenuating circumstances, death of minor child, and community ties. Recommendation: suspension of license, probation, mandatory AA. Attached was a plea agreement. My father's signature again. Reckless endangerment. 12 months probation. License suspended for 12 months. I shuffled through the rest of the papers with numb fingers. There was the letter from his lawyer, all sympathetic fonts in legalese. There were copies of checks my parents had written to the funeral home, to the hospital, to the lawyer's office. And then at the bottom, there was a single sheet of notebook paper in my mother's handwriting. Dear Henry, it said. I know you want to believe it was her. I know it's easier that way. But we both know you were driving. We both saw you climb out from behind that wheel. I heard the officer say you blew over the limit. You can lie to the town. You can even lie to the girls. But you can't lie to God. And you can't keep lying to yourself forever. I don't know how we live with this. I only know we have to try. But I can't do that if you keep putting this on Hannah. She will crumble under it. She's strong, but she's still a child. Please, for all our sakes, stop. The letter wasn't signed. It had never been mailed. It had been folded once and tucked into this box and left to yellow along with the rest of it. I sat on the carpet and cried so hard I couldn't see. For 17-year-old me, screaming that it was my fault. For 10-year-old Luke, who never got to grow up and tell his own version of the story. For my mother, who had written those words and then at some point decided to go along with the lie anyway. What are you doing? My father's voice made me jump. I hadn't heard him come down the hall. He stood in the doorway, his hair mussed, his flannel shirt half-buttoned, looking smaller than he used to but still somehow looming. I scrambled to wipe my face. The box fell, I said. I was cleaning up. His gaze dropped to the papers in my lap. For a second, his face went slack. Then the anger came, creeping up his neck in a red flush. You had no right, he said. That's my personal business. It's not just yours, I said quietly. I held up the report. My hand shook. This is about me too. And Luke. Put it away, he said. It's done. It's over. No good will come of digging that up. You've been digging it up for 30 years, I said. Every time you tell people I killed him. Every time you call me a murderer in everything but name. You got behind that wheel, he snapped. You always forget that part. You gave me the keys, I shot back. You'd been drinking all day. I was trying to keep us alive. You could have said no, he said. You always could have said no. I laughed, a short, hysterical sound. That's rich, I said. From the man who told me if I told the DA the truth, I'd ruin the family. I was 17. You were 43. The officer's report says you were in the driver's seat. That's what happened. You've been rewriting it ever since. Paperwork can be wrong, he muttered, the same phrase he'd used all those years ago. Witnesses make mistakes. The important part is my son is dead, and somebody has to answer for that. And you decided it should be me, I said. The words sat between us. Heavy. You're strong, he said, like that explained anything. You could take it. I was a kid, I said. I spent half my life thinking I should have been the one in the ground. I built my personality around trying to pay back a debt I didn't owe. I let you humiliate me in front of boyfriends, friends, my own husband because I thought I deserved it. You did that. You killed my son, he said again, stubborn. I realized then that there was no argument that would dislodge that belief. Not the police report. Not my mother's letter. Not reality itself. He needed me to be the villain because the alternative was being the man who got drunk, drove his kids home, and didn't make it all the way. So I left. I took the box with me. I scanned the report and the plea. I copied the letter. I took them to a therapist my doctor recommended. A woman with gentle eyes who did not flinch when I told her my father had been calling me a murderer my whole adult life. "You've been living under a story that isn't true," she said. "Of course you're anxious. Of course you're depressed. Your nervous system never got to relax. It's been on the hook for a crime you didn't commit." "But I did drive," I said. "I did take the keys. I did turn that wheel." "You were a teenager trying to prevent a drunk adult from driving," she said. "You made a judgment call. It ended horribly. But responsibility is not the same thing as blame. Your father has used your regret to avoid feeling his own. What am I supposed to do?" I asked. "Stop letting him?" she suggested. "How?" I whispered. "By telling the truth," she said. "At least to yourself. And maybe eventually to the people who matter." The people who matter. That's what I thought about for 3 weeks. Every time the kids came home from their grandparents' house with a new version of the accident story. Every time my mother called to say, "Your father's upset. He feels like you don't respect him anymore." Every time I opened the sideboard drawer and saw that folder. Noah is 16. The same age Luke would have been that last year if he'd been reversed in time. He just got his license. He's careful, borderline paranoid about following the rules of the road. I thought I was the reason for that. Because I drilled it into him. Because I've been honest about how dangerous cars are. I didn't realize my father had been giving him a different lesson behind my back. "Your mother killed her brother. Don't be like her." Sitting at my own Thanksgiving table, listening to my dad tell that story again with that satisfied, righteous tone in his voice, watching my son walk out like he just watched a stranger confess to a crime, something in me snapped into place. Not broke. Not shattered. Just aligned. I was done. Back in the dining room, my father's hand was still on the report. "You think this changes anything?" he asked. "You think a few lines on a page erase what you did?" "I think they show what you did," I said, "and what you chose to do afterward." "Grandpa," Noah said again, stepping closer. His face was pale, but his voice was steady. "Why did you tell me Mom was drunk?" My father swallowed. For a second, I thought I saw something like shame flicker across his face. Then it was gone. "Because she was," he said. "She's twisting it now to make herself feel better. She's always been good at that." "That's enough," my mother said suddenly. Her voice was thin, but it cut through the din. Everyone turned to look at her. She was gripping her napkin so hard her knuckles were white. "Liz," my father said, "stay out of this." "I can't," she said. She looked old and tired and something else I couldn't quite name. Resigned, maybe. "Not anymore." She looked at me. "At the report. To my kids." "He was driving," she said softly. "That night. Your father." The room went so quiet I could hear the clock in the hallway ticking. "I told him not to," she went on. "I told him to let you drive or stay put. He wouldn't listen. You argued with him in the parking lot. I saw. You came in afterward and told me you got him to hand you the keys. I was so relieved. I thought, she saved them. And then the police came. And they said the car had crashed. And they said Luke." Her voice broke. She pressed the napkin to her mouth, swallowed, and continued. "At the hospital, he told me he was going to tell them you were driving, that he'd seen you behind the wheel. He said they'd go easier on you than on him. I begged him not to. I wrote him that letter." She nodded toward the box. "He never answered it. But he stopped talking to the police about you. He told them he'd been driving. And I thought it was over. And then later he started saying other things. I needed someone to blame," my father said hoarsely. "I was drowning. My boy was dead." "So you blamed your daughter," Eric said quietly. It was the first time he'd spoken since I pulled the folder out. For your choices. She took the keys, my father snapped. She insisted. She was 17, Eric said. You were the adult. You're the one who chose to drink and get in the car. That's on you. You're just taking her side, Dad snarled. Of course I'm taking her side, Eric said. She's my wife. And she's been living under the weight of your lies for 30 years. I didn't lie, Dad insisted. I just told it the way it felt. My mother let out a strangled laugh. Henry, she said, you've been telling people your daughter murdered her brother. That's not the way it felt. That's a lie. Becca stood up so fast her chair toppled. Why didn't you say anything? She cried, rounding on our mother. All these years. Why didn't you stop him? Why did you let us think? She broke off sobbing. I tried, Mom whispered. I tried at first. But every time I corrected him, he'd shut down. Or he'd drink more. Or he'd say, fine, maybe I should have just let them put me in prison. Then where would you all be? And I was afraid. Of losing the house. Of losing him. Of losing all of it. So I told myself it was easier if she carried it. She was strong. She looked at me then, really looked, and I saw something crack in her eyes. I was wrong, she said. I was so wrong. My father shoved his chair back, the legs screeching against the floor. You're all ganging up on me, he said. In my old age. On Thanksgiving. After everything I've done for you. He waved a hand toward my kids, my sister's kids, the house. You wouldn't even have this place if I hadn't co-signed the loan. You think you'd have gone to college, Hannah, without me talking to your counselor? You think your husband would have gotten that job without my reference? Everything's a transaction to you, I said. Every good thing you do comes with a bill you expect us to pay for the rest of our lives. I'm done paying. You're ungrateful, he spat. You're cruel. You're killing me with this. You killed Luke, I said quietly. I was there. The report is there. Mom just said it. You can keep telling your version if you want, but you're not going to tell it in front of my kids anymore. Not in my house. He stared at me for a long moment. Then he did something I don't think I'd ever seen him do. He faltered. His shoulders slumped. For a second he looked very small. Very old. You want me gone? He asked. We're leaving, my mother said suddenly, standing up. Come on, Henry. Liz, he said, stunned. What? We've ruined their holiday enough, she said. We can fight about this at home. She looked at me. I'm sorry, she whispered. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. But it was something. We watched them go. My mother half supporting him as he shuffled down the front walk. The door closed behind them with a soft click. The silence they left behind was heavy and buzzing. I'm so sorry, I said to my kids, my voice shaking. I should have stopped him sooner. I should have told you the truth. Noah came around the table and wrapped his arms around me. He's taller than I am now. He tucked my head under his chin like I used to do for him when he was little. I'm sorry you went through that, he said. For that long. I wish I could go back and punch him. I laughed, choked on it, cried instead. Lily slid under my other arm. Becca collapsed into another chair, her face in her hands. I've been so awful to you, she sobbed. All these years. Every time I was mad at you, I threw it in your face. I said things like, at least I didn't kill our brother. We were kids, I said. We believed what they told us. It's not your fault. It feels like it, she said. It feels like I participated. We all did, I said. We were surviving. That night, after everyone left and the dishwasher hummed and the house finally quieted, Eric and I sat at the kitchen table, the police report between us. You can't unring that bell, he said gently. I don't want to, I said. I wish I'd rung it 20 years ago. You know they're going to make you the villain, he said. In their version, the daughter who attacked her dying father at Thanksgiving. The one who couldn't let the past go. I've been their villain since I was 17, I said. At least now I'm telling my own story. In the weeks that followed, the fallout was exactly as ugly as you'd imagine. My father told anyone who would listen that I was trying to destroy him. Some of our relatives cut contact with me. We don't know what to believe. My aunt wrote in a long email that managed to both sides a fatal car accident. Your father is devastated. Couldn't you have waited until he passed to bring this up? My answer, which I did not send, was no. I could not have waited. Because every holiday, every birthday, every time we were in the same room, he sharpened his story on my bones. And now my kids were old enough to hear it, to internalize it, to see me the way he saw me. I couldn't let that keep happening. A month later, my father had a stroke. My mother called in tears. He's in the hospital, she sobbed. He might not make it. Are you happy? Of course I'm not happy, I said. Why would you say that? Because you've been stressing him, she cried. Fighting with him. Waving those papers in his face. You could have killed him with that. His blood pressure and his choices killed him, I said. Not me. Are you coming? She asked. I sat on my kitchen floor and cried for a long time. For the father I'd wanted and never really had. For the little girl who had tried so hard to earn his love. For the woman who'd finally stood up to him and was now being blamed for his failing health. In the end, I didn't go. Eric offered to drive me. I almost said yes, but I knew what would happen if I showed up. He'd cry, he'd beg, or he'd rage. He'd demand I recant. He'd want me to apologize for telling the truth. I couldn't. Not anymore. He died 3 days later. My mother called again, her voice strangely calm. Your father's gone, she said. The funeral is Saturday. Will you speak? The idea made me feel sick. I don't know, I said. He was your father, she snapped. Whatever he did or didn't do, you owe him that much. In the end, I went. I stood at the pulpit of the church where he'd served as a deacon, where he'd told his version of our lives for decades, and I talked about his laugh and his work ethic and the way he taught me to change a tire, and the time he built Luke a treehouse out back. I did not talk about the accident. I did not talk about the police report. I did not talk about the story he'd wrapped around my neck for 30 years like a noose. Afterward, in the receiving line, people hugged me and said things like, "He loved you so much," which is true in a way that doesn't feel safe to hold. Love without accountability is a knife without a handle. You can pick it up, but you're going to bleed. It's been almost a year since that Thanksgiving. My mother and I are on shaky, wary terms. She's in therapy now, begrudgingly, at my insistence. Sometimes she says things like, "We all made mistakes," which is infuriating and progress in equal measure. Sometimes she still slips and says, "When you killed Luke," and then stops, corrects herself. I mean, when the accident happened. My sister and I are rebuilding. Slowly. She took it hard. Finding out your moral compass has been pointing at a magnet your whole life will do that. She started remembering things. The way Dad's hand shook when he took his first drink after the accident. The way Mom cried the night she almost mailed a letter and then didn't. The way I flinched every time anyone mentioned driving. "I'm so sorry," she says often. "I don't know how to make it up to you." You don't have to, I tell her. Just don't raise your kids on lies. As for me, I'm learning how to live without the belief that I'm fundamentally dangerous. I still check my mirrors 3 times. I still get nervous driving in the rain. But I no longer tell myself that every bad thing that happens is somehow my fault. I no longer let my father's voice in my head have the final say. I also don't let my mother erase what she did. I was scared, she says. We all were. So was I answer. And you chose to protect him instead of me. Therapy helps. Not in the magical all is forgiven way, but in the my body doesn't shake every time I drive past that curve anymore way. In the I can look at a picture of Luke and feel something other than condemnation way. Sometimes I sit in my car outside the cemetery where he's buried and talk to him. I don't know if anyone hears, but it helps. I'm sorry I got in that car. I tell him. I'm sorry I wasn't strong enough to walk away. I'm sorry I let them make me your killer when we both know that's not how it went. Then I tell him about Noah and Lily, about how Noah refuses rides from anyone who even smells like beer, about how Lily wants to be a lawyer because she's sick of adults getting away with stuff. I tell him that if his death taught us anything, it's that we don't ignore red flags anymore, that we don't let silence do other people's dirty work. I don't know if that's enough. Doesn't feel like it, but it's something. So that's where I'm at, internet strangers. I was 17 when my brother died in a car accident. My father was driving drunk. The official reports say so. But for 30 years, my dad told a different story, one where I was behind the wheel, drunk and reckless, the reason my little brother never grew up. My mother let him. My sister believed him. The whole town believed him. I built my life around atoning for something I didn't do. Then I found the police report in his closet, along with a letter my mother wrote begging him to stop blaming me and never sent. When he tried to tell the story again in front of my kids, I put the paperwork on the table and said, "No more." The truth blew up my family. Some people will never forgive me for humiliating my father at the end of his life. Others quietly thanked me. My dad died without apologizing. My mother is still more comfortable with "we all made mistakes" than "we lied to you." My kids know the truth now. They know their mother is not a murderer. They also know how easy it is for a lie, told often enough, to become a family's religion. So here's my question to you. If you were in my shoes, if you'd spent 30 years carrying the blame for a tragedy you didn't cause, because it was easier for everyone to let you be the villain, and then you finally found proof that the person pointing the finger at you was the one who'd actually been at fault, would you have done what I did and put the truth on the table in front of everyone, even if it meant shattering your family's image of your father and being called cruel and ungrateful for the rest of your life? Or would you have kept the secret, let your dad die with his version intact, and tried to make peace with being the bad guy in a story that was never really yours to begin with?